Why would a well-mannered, impeccably dressed woman be asked to leave a spa the moment she stepped inside? Why did a single message from her leave the entire reception area in stunned silence? Zora, draped in a minimalist, tailored black suit, each stitch seemingly crafted to measure. She stepped into Serene Wellness Spa under the shimmering light reflected from the crystal chandeliers above. Her stride was unhurried, her gaze observant, exuding the composed presence of someone long accustomed to power, yet never needing to flaunt it. She stood upon a bucket of wax, silhouetted. Ironically, it was that quiet elegance that provoked Jessica, the blonde receptionist with expertly applied makeup and frosty eyes, to narrow her gaze and curl her lips in disdain before declaring, as if banishing an intruder, "We have standards." Brandon, the manager behind her, cast a quick glance, crossed his arms, and silently signaled agreement. No one intervened. No one spoke. Zora didn't argue. She simply reached for her phone, typed a few words, and sent a single message. And from that moment on, the power in that room began to fracture. You won't believe who they just disrespected. And what happens when she decides enough is enough? Zora had entered the spa seeking nothing more than a peaceful afternoon away from the boardroom. The quarterly reports were finished, the merger negotiations had concluded successfully, and for once she had carved out time for herself. She'd chosen casual attire, deliberately. Designer clothes that didn't scream wealth. Comfortable shoes that suggested she might walk rather than arrive by private car. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was seeking relaxation in the very business she'd built from the ground up 5 years ago. Serene Wellness Spa had been her vision of creating a sanctuary where people could find peace and rejuvenation. She'd invested millions in the marble fixtures, the imported healing stones, the state-of-the-art treatment rooms. Every detail had been carefully chosen to create an atmosphere of tranquility and welcome. Now, standing in her own reception area, Zora observes the space with fresh eyes. The waterfall feature she'd commissioned from a renowned artist creates a soothing backdrop. The seating area, with its plush, cream-colored furniture and carefully curated art collection, speaks of luxury and comfort. Everything is exactly as she'd envisioned it. Everything except the culture. Jessica speaks to her, slowly and loudly, as if Zora doesn't understand English. "We have a very exclusive clientele here. You might be more comfortable at one of those other places." Zora watches as Jessica's demeanor shifts completely when a well-dressed white woman approaches the desk. The transformation is startling. Jessica's voice becomes warm and welcoming, her posture relaxes, and her smile becomes genuine rather than forced. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Henderson. Your usual Thursday massage? Of course, we have your preferred therapist available immediately." Zora observes the interaction with the trained eye of someone who has spent years studying human behavior and organizational dynamics. This isn't random bias. It's systematic discrimination that has become so normalized the staff doesn't even realize they're doing it. "Excuse me," Zora says politely, waiting for Jessica to finish with Mrs. Henderson. "I'd like to inquire about your services." Jessica turns back to Zora with visible reluctance. "As I mentioned, we're fully booked today and tomorrow. Actually, we're quite busy for the next several weeks." "I see," Zora responds, pulling out her phone to check something. "What about the massage therapy services? The deep tissue treatment specifically? That's a very intensive service. Are you sure you're familiar with that type of therapy?" Zora nods patiently. "I've had deep tissue massage before." "Could you tell me about your therapist's qualifications?" Jessica exchanges a look with Brandon, the spa manager, who has been hovering nearby. He's a tall man in his 30s, with perfectly styled hair and a suit that probably costs more than most people's monthly rent. He nods at Jessica approvingly, as if she's handling a difficult situation exactly as trained. Our therapists are highly trained professionals, Jessica responds with the kind of condescension typically reserved for children. They work with a very specific type of clientele. I'm not sure this would be the right fit for you. Zora's business acumen kicks in as she processes the legal implications of what she's hearing. Every discriminatory comment, every policy violation, every instance of differential treatment based on race, it's all creating liability for her company. More importantly, it's creating an environment that directly contradicts the values she thought she had instilled in her organization. I understand, Zora says quietly, her voice carrying a weight that neither Jessica nor Brandon recognizes. Perhaps you could explain your membership requirements? I'd like to understand the process. Brandon steps forward, his smile as fake as Jessica's. Well, typically our new clients come through referrals from existing members. It's really more of a community approach to wellness. Zora nods thoughtfully, making mental notes about policies that don't exist anywhere in the company handbook. The discrimination is so embedded in the staff's behavior that they're inventing rules on the spot to justify their bias. She pulls out her tablet, ostensibly to check her calendar, but actually to begin documenting the conversation. The voice recording app is already running, capturing every word for the legal review she knows will follow. I see, Zora says, her tone remaining professional despite the growing disappointment in her chest. And who exactly handles these referrals? Jessica's confidence grows with each passing moment, emboldened by what she perceives as Zora's passive acceptance of the treatment. She produces a clipboard with forms that Zora has never seen before, documents that aren't part of any official spa policy, but apparently exist for situations like this. You'll need to fill out these preliminary forms, Jessica announces, sliding the clipboard across the marble counter. We require employment verification, 3 personal references, and a credit check before we can consider your application. Zora examines the forms with the practiced eye of someone who has reviewed countless legal documents. None of this paperwork exists in the spa's official procedures. Jessica and Brandon have created their own screening process, designed specifically to exclude people they deem undesirable. This is quite thorough, Zora observes, her voice neutral. How long does this process typically take? Oh, several weeks at minimum, Brandon interjects smoothly. We're very careful about maintaining our standards. I'm sure you understand the importance of compatibility with our existing clientele. The word compatibility hangs in the air like a toxic cloud. Zora recognizes it as code, the kind of language that allows discrimination while providing plausible deniability. While Zora examines the forms, she notices how other customers are being treated. A young white couple walks in without appointments and is immediately accommodated. An elderly white gentleman requests a same-day massage and is told they'll make something work for him. The differential treatment is so blatant that Zora begins to wonder if it's intentional, or if the staff is simply that unconscious of their bias. I notice you're able to accommodate walk-in appointments for some clients, Zora comments, her tone remaining conversational. Jessica's face flushes slightly. Well, those are special circumstances. Long-term clients, you understand, people who have been with us for years. Zora nods, knowing full well that the spa has only been open for 5 years, and that many of today's accommodated clients are people she's never seen before. The lies are building upon themselves, creating a web of deception that will be impossible to defend. I see, Zora says, pulling out her phone to send a text message. To anyone watching, it appears she's messaging a friend or family member. In reality, she's alerting her assistant to prepare for an emergency board meeting. Emergency situation at the spa, she types. Need full executive team available within the hour. Legal implications significant. Brandon notices Zora's phone activity and his expression hardens. Ma'am, I'm going to need to ask you to put your phone away. We have strict policies about recording or photography in our facility. Zora looks up at him with raised eyebrows. I'm sending a text message. Is that not allowed? We just want to ensure the privacy of our clients, Brandon responds, though his tone suggests he's more concerned about Zora documenting the discrimination than protecting anyone's privacy. Of course, Zora agrees, but she doesn't put her phone away. Instead, she continues typing, now messaging her legal counsel about potential civil rights violations and the need for immediate documentation. The atmosphere in the reception area grows more tense as other staff members begin to notice the situation. A massage therapist emerges from the treatment area and whispers something to Jessica. Two other employees gather near the reception desk, their body language suggesting they're prepared to support whatever action Jessica and Brandon decide to take. Zora realizes she's witnessing the full scope of the cultural problem in her organization. This isn't just about two biased employees. It's about a systematic culture of discrimination that has infected multiple levels of her staff. You know, Zora says conversationally, I'm curious about your training procedures. How do you ensure that all staff members understand federal anti-discrimination laws? Brandon's confident facade begins to crack. I'm not sure what you're implying, but we follow all applicable regulations. I'm not implying anything, Zora responds calmly. I'm simply interested in understanding how a business like this operates. The legal framework must be quite complex. Jessica looks increasingly uncomfortable as Zora's questions become more pointed. She exchanges nervous glances with Brandon, who seems to be recognizing that Zora isn't the typical customer they can easily dismiss. Perhaps, Zora continues, you could provide me with a copy of your anti-discrimination policy. I'd like to review it before completing these forms. The request sends a ripple of panic through the staff. They know no such policy exists in any readily available form, and even if it did, their behavior over the past 20 minutes has violated every principle it would contain. Zora watches their discomfort with the detached interest of someone who has spent decades negotiating complex business deals. She can see the moment when they realize they're in over their heads, but she also knows they're too committed to their discriminatory path to back down gracefully. Her phone buzzes with a response from her assistant. Executive team assembling. Legal counsel en route. How serious is the situation? Zora types back. Serious enough to require immediate systemic changes. Document everything. The tension in the reception area reaches a breaking point when Jessica decides to make Zora's exclusion as public as possible. Her voice rises deliberately, ensuring that every person in the waiting area can hear her words. Ma'am, I've been trying to be polite, but you clearly don't understand the situation here, Jessica announces. Her voice serves a very specific clientele. We have standards to maintain, and frankly, you don't fit the profile of our typical customer. Zora feels the weight of every eye in the room turning toward her. The waiting area, which moments ago had been filled with the gentle murmur of conversation and the soothing sounds of the waterfall, falls silent. She's been in high-stakes boardrooms where millions of dollars hinged on her next words, but this moment feels different. This is personal, in a way that business negotiations never are. I see, Zora responds, her voice steady despite the humiliation burning in her chest. Could you explain what specific profile you're referring to? Brandon steps forward, emboldened by Jessica's public stance. Look, let's be honest here. Our clients expect a certain atmosphere, a certain type of environment. You walking in here changes the dynamic for everyone else. The coded language is becoming less coded by the moment. Zora realizes they're moving beyond subtle discrimination into territory that will be impossible to defend legally. She continues recording, knowing that every word will be crucial evidence in the reckoning that's coming. I understand, Zora says, her tone remaining professional even as her heart pounds with righteous anger. Could you provide me with written documentation of these policies? I'd like to review them. Jessica's laugh is sharp and dismissive. We don't need to provide you with anything. This is a private business, and we have the right to refuse service to anyone who doesn't meet our standards. Actually, Zora responds quietly, Federal law requires that places of public accommodation provide equal access regardless of race, color, religion, or national origin. But I'm sure you're familiar with the Civil Rights Act. The mention of civil rights law sends a visible chill through the staff. Brandon's face pales slightly, but instead of backing down, he doubles down on the discrimination. "Don't try to lecture us about the law," he snaps. "We know exactly what we're doing here. And what we're doing is maintaining the kind of establishment that our real customers expect." Zora begins photographing the forms they gave her, documenting the fabricated requirements that don't exist in any official policy. She also takes pictures of the waiting area, capturing the scene of her public humiliation alongside the continued accommodation of white customers. "Ma'am, I told you no photography," Brandon says, his voice rising with anger. "I'm documenting potential civil rights violations," Zora responds calmly. "I have every right to gather evidence of discriminatory treatment." Jessica's eyes widen with alarm. "Evidence? What are you talking about? We haven't discriminated against anyone." Zora looks around the waiting area, noting the other customers who have been watching the interaction with varying degrees of comfort. Some appear genuinely uncomfortable with the staff's behavior, while others seem to approve of the exclusion they're witnessing. "In the past 30 minutes, Zora says, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to presenting facts, "you've denied me service while accommodating multiple walk-in customers. You've created fabricated requirements that don't exist in your official policies. You've made comments about my compatibility with your clientele, based solely on my appearance. And you've done all of this publicly, in front of witnesses." The legal precision of her language clearly unnerves both Jessica and Brandon. They're beginning to realize that Zora isn't just another customer they can dismiss. She's someone with legal knowledge who's been systematically documenting their discrimination. "Look," Brandon says, his tone becoming more aggressive. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing here, but we're not falling for it. You need to leave. Now." Zora remains seated, her posture calm but her eyes flashing with determination. "I'm not playing any game. I'm attempting to receive equal treatment at a place of public accommodation. If you're asking me to leave based on my race, that's a federal crime." The word crime hangs in the air like a thunderclap. Other customers begin shifting uncomfortably in their seats, and Zora notices several of them pulling out their phones. The situation has escalated beyond a simple service dispute into something much more serious. Jessica looks desperately at Brandon, clearly hoping he'll handle the situation. But Brandon seems equally unsure of how to proceed now that Zora has made the legal implications explicit. "You don't belong here," Jessica finally says, her voice carrying all the venom she's been restraining. "People like you should know your place." The mask has finally slipped completely. The coded language, the fabricated policies, the pretense of professional standards, all of it falls away to reveal the raw prejudice underneath. Zora feels a mixture of heartbreak and vindication. Heartbreak because this is happening in her own business, among employees she trusted. Vindication because now there's no ambiguity about what's occurring. Zora's phone buzzes with a message from her assistant. "Legal team standing by. Board members assembled, waiting for your signal." She types back, "Situation escalating. Full documentation required. Prepare for immediate terminations and potential litigation." The other customers in the waiting area are now openly watching the confrontation. Some are recording with their phones, recognizing that they're witnessing something significant. Zora realizes that within hours, this incident will be documented across social media, creating public accountability that extends far beyond the legal consequences. "I want to speak with the owner," Zora says, her voice carrying new authority. Jessica smirks. "The owner doesn't deal with people like you. You're wasting everyone's time." Zora looks directly at Jessica, her expression serious. "I think the owner would be very interested in learning about this conversation." The situation spirals completely out of control when Victoria Chase, the spa's operations director, arrives to handle the situation. At 50, Victoria carries herself with the kind of authority that comes from years of managing luxury establishments. Her silver hair is perfectly styled, her suit impeccably tailored, and her expression suggests she's accustomed to making problems disappear. "I understand we're having some difficulty here," Victoria says, her voice carrying the practiced condescension of someone who believes she's dealing with a troublemaker. "Jessica, Brandon, what seems to be the issue?" "This woman is demanding service and refuses to leave when we've explained our policies," Jessica responds, her confidence restored by Victoria's presence. "She's been disruptive and threatening." Victoria studies Zora with calculating eyes, making the same rapid judgments based on appearance that Jessica and Brandon made earlier. Her assessment is swift and dismissive. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to cooperate with our staff," Victoria says, her tone suggesting she's used to having her authority accepted without question. "We have procedures here, and everyone needs to follow them." Zora remains seated, her hands folded calmly in her lap. "I'd be happy to follow your procedures. Could you explain what specific policies I've violated?" Victoria's smile is thin and cold. "Let's start with the fact that you're recording conversations without consent. That's a violation of privacy laws in this state." "Actually," Zora responds, "this is a one-party consent state. I'm legally entitled to record conversations I'm participating in, but I appreciate your concern about legal compliance." The correction clearly irritates Victoria, who isn't accustomed to being challenged on legal matters. Her expression hardens as she realizes Zora isn't going to be easily intimidated. "Fine," Victoria says, her voice becoming more authoritative. "But we still need to verify your ability to pay for services. We've had issues with people wasting our therapist's time, and we need to protect our business interests." Zora raises an eyebrow. "What kind of verification do you require?" "Employment verification, credit references, and a deposit equal to the full cost of services," Victoria responds, clearly making up requirements as she goes. "It's standard procedure for new clients." "Interesting," Zora says, pulling out her tablet. "I don't see any of these requirements mentioned on your website or in your published policies." Victoria's face flushes with annoyance. "We don't publish all of our internal procedures. That would be impractical." Zora nods thoughtfully. "I understand. Could you provide me with a copy of these internal procedures? I'd like to review them." "That's proprietary information," Victoria snaps. "We don't share internal documents with the general public." "I see," Zora responds, making notes on her tablet. "So you have unpublished policies that you selectively apply to certain customers. That's an interesting business model." Victoria realizes that Zora is documenting everything and that her improvised policies are creating legal liability. Instead of backing down, she decides to escalate further. "Look, I don't know what kind of game you're playing here, but I'm not going to let you disrupt our business," Victoria says, her voice rising. "You're clearly not here for legitimate reasons. You're here to cause trouble." "What makes you think I'm here to cause trouble?" Zora asks, her tone remaining calm despite the accusation. "Because people like you always are," Victoria responds, the mask of professionalism finally slipping. "You come into places like this looking for problems, looking for reasons to complain, looking for payouts. The racist assumption hangs in the air like a toxic cloud." Zora feels the familiar burn of discrimination, but she also feels the cold calculation of someone who's about to make a very expensive mistake, pay for their prejudice. "People like me," Zora repeats slowly. "Could you clarify what you mean by that?" Victoria realizes she's said too much, but she's too committed to her position to back down gracefully. "I think you know exactly what I mean." Zora's phone begins buzzing with calls from her executive team. The sound draws Victoria's attention, and she notices that Zora's phone screen shows multiple incoming calls from numbers labeled legal counsel, board chair, and executive assistant. "Ma'am, I need you to turn off your phone," Victoria demands. "You're disrupting our environment." "I'm receiving calls from my attorney," Zora responds calmly. "I'm sure you understand the importance of legal consultation in situations like this." Victoria's eyes narrow. "Your attorney? What exactly do you think you need an attorney for? Civil rights violations, discriminatory practices, and potential criminal charges?" Zora responds matter-of-factly. The list is getting quite extensive. The mention of criminal charges sends a visible shock through Victoria. She exchanges alarmed glances with Jessica and Brandon, who are beginning to realize that their discrimination might have serious legal consequences. "You're being ridiculous," Victoria says, but her voice lacks the confidence it held moments earlier. "We haven't violated any laws." Zora stands up slowly, her movement drawing the attention of everyone in the waiting area. "In the past hour, your staff has denied me service based on my race, created fabricated policies to justify discrimination, publicly humiliated me in front of other customers, and made explicitly racist comments. All of this has been documented and witnessed." Victoria's face pales as she realizes the scope of the legal exposure her staff has created. "Those are serious accusations. Do you have any proof?" Zora holds up her phone, showing the recording app that's been running throughout the interaction. "I have audio documentation of every conversation, photographs of the fabricated forms you created, and video of the deferential treatment. I also have multiple witnesses who can testify about what they observed." The waiting area has become completely silent except for the sound of the waterfall. Other customers are openly staring at the confrontation, many of them recording with their phones. Zora realizes that within hours, this incident will be shared across social media platforms, creating public accountability that extends far beyond any legal consequences. Furthermore, Zora continues, her voice carrying new authority. "I've been in contact with my legal team throughout this incident. They're prepared to file federal civil rights charges and pursue civil litigation for damages." Victoria tries to regain control of the situation. "Now let's not be hasty. I'm sure we can work something out. Perhaps there's been a misunderstanding." "There's been no misunderstanding," Zora responds firmly. "Your staff has engaged in systematic discrimination, and you've chosen to escalate rather than address the problem. The legal consequences of that choice are now unavoidable." Zora's phone rings again, and this time she answers it. "Yes, I'm still here. The situation has escalated significantly. Yes, I think we need to proceed with immediate action." Victoria strains to hear the conversation, realizing that Zora is coordinating some kind of response with people who clearly have significant resources and legal expertise. "Ma'am, who exactly are you?" Victoria asks, her voice carrying new uncertainty. Zora looks at her calmly. "I'm someone who expected to be treated with basic human dignity at a place of public accommodation. Instead, I've been subjected to systematic discrimination by your staff. The question isn't who I am. It's why you thought this behavior was acceptable." The power dynamic in the room has shifted completely. Victoria, who entered with complete confidence in her authority, now finds herself on the defensive. Jessica and Brandon look increasingly panicked as they realize their actions have created far more serious consequences than they anticipated. Zora's phone buzzes with a text from her assistant. "Legal team arriving in 5 minutes, board members standing by. Media relations prepared for potential statement. How do you want to proceed?" Zora types back, "Full accountability, no half measures. Time to send a message." Zora's phone rings, with the distinctive tone she's assigned to her assistant. The sound cuts through the tense silence of the reception area like a blade, and she answers with the calm professionalism that has defined her career. "Ms. Thompson, the board is assembled for your emergency meeting," comes the voice from the phone, loud enough for Victoria to hear. "Should I tell them you're running late from your spa inspection?" The word inspection hangs in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Victoria's face goes white as the implications begin to sink in. Jessica and Brandon exchange panicked glances, finally understanding that something is terribly wrong with their assumptions. "Yes, I'm still conducting the inspection," Zora responds, her tone shifting from customer to executive. "Please tell the board that we have significant operational issues that require immediate attention. I'll need a full review of our hiring practices, training procedures, and cultural compliance protocols." Victoria's legs feel suddenly weak. "Miss Thompson?" she whispers. Zora continues her phone conversation, discussing quarterly revenue reports, staffing decisions, and policy implementations with the casual authority of someone who makes these decisions every day. She mentions specific financial details that only an owner would know, discusses personnel files that only an executive would access, and references board meetings that only a CEO would attend. "Also," Zora continues into the phone, "please have legal counsel prepare termination paperwork for multiple employees. We have documented civil rights violations that require immediate action." The blood drains from Jessica's face as she realizes what she's done. Brandon backs away from the reception desk as if it's suddenly become radioactive. Victoria stands frozen, her mind racing through the implications of having personally overseen the discrimination of the spa's owner. Zora ends the call and turns to address the 3 employees who have spent the past hour systematically humiliating her. Her demeanor has transformed completely. Gone is the patient customer seeking service, replaced by a corporate executive addressing a serious operational failure. "Now," Zora says, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to commanding boardrooms. "Let's discuss what's happened here today." She pulls out her tablet, accessing files that clearly show her authority over the business. Financial reports, employee records, operational guidelines, all of it confirms what the phone call revealed. "In the past hour," Zora continues, "I've documented systematic discrimination by my own employees against their own CEO. The legal implications are staggering, but the operational failures are even more concerning." Victoria tries to stammer an explanation. "Miss Thompson, I had no idea. We would never. This is all a misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding," Zora interrupts, her tone cutting through the excuses. "You created fabricated policies to justify discrimination. You made explicitly racist comments. You escalated a situation that could have been resolved with basic human decency." Jessica begins to cry, finally understanding the magnitude of her mistake. "I'm so sorry, Ms. Thompson. I didn't know." "You didn't know because you didn't care to know," Zora responds firmly. "You saw a black woman and made assumptions based on nothing but prejudice. The fact that I'm your employer doesn't change the fundamental wrongness of your behavior. It just makes the consequences more immediate." Brandon tries to defend himself. "We were just trying to maintain standards." "Whose standards?" Zora asks, her voice sharp with authority. "Show me where in our employee handbook it says to discriminate against customers based on race. Show me where our training materials instruct you to create barriers for people who don't look like your preferred clientele." The silence that follows is deafening. Zora knows there are no such policies because she personally approved every training manual, every operational procedure, every aspect of the spa's official culture. What she's witnessing is the toxic, informal culture that developed in the absence of strong leadership oversight. The Kolpai says Zora's phone buzzes with another call, this time from her legal counsel. She answers it on speaker, ensuring that Victoria, Jessica, and Brandon can hear every word. "Zora, we've reviewed the audio files you sent," comes the lawyer's voice. "We have clear evidence of federal civil rights violations, discriminatory practices, and potential criminal liability. Do you want us to proceed with charges?" Victoria's knees buckle and she grabs the reception desk for support. Jessica sobs openly, and Brandon looks like he's about to be sick. Let's start with immediate terminations, Zora responds. We'll discuss criminal charges after we've addressed the operational failures. Zora ends the call and looks at the 3 employees who have created this crisis. Her expression is stern but not vindictive. She's a leader addressing a serious business problem, not someone seeking personal revenge. Victoria, you're terminated immediately for discriminatory practices and failure to maintain civil rights compliance. Jessica, you're fired for engaging in systematic discrimination and creating hostile environment for customers. Brandon, you're dismissed for supporting discriminatory practices and escalating rather than resolving the situation. The finality of the words hits like physical blows. Victoria staggers, Jessica collapses into a chair, and Brandon stares in disbelief. Security will escort you from the premises, Zora continues. Your final paychecks will be processed according to state law, but any benefits or severance packages are forfeited due to the discriminatory conduct. Zora's executive team begins arriving, her assistant, legal counsel, and several board members. The spa's reception area suddenly fills with people who clearly recognize Zora's authority and are prepared to support whatever actions she deems necessary. The media relations team is standing by, her assistant reports. How do you want to handle the public statement? Zora considers the question carefully. We'll acknowledge the incident, take full responsibility for the failures in our organizational culture, and outline specific steps we're taking to prevent this from happening again. This is a teaching moment, not a cover-up. Victoria makes one last, desperate attempt to save her career. Ms. Thompson, please, I have a family, a mortgage. I can't afford to lose this job. Zora's expression softens slightly, but her resolve remains firm. I understand the personal consequences are severe, but discrimination has consequences, and those consequences can't be avoided just because they're inconvenient. The other customers in the waiting area watch in fascination as the dramatic reversal unfolds. Several are recording with their phones, capturing the moment when discriminatory actions meet accountability. Zora addresses them directly. I apologize that you've had to witness this situation. No customer should ever experience discrimination at any business, and I take full responsibility for the failures in our organizational culture that made this possible. One of the witnesses, an elderly white woman who had watched the entire confrontation, approaches Zora. I want you to know that what they did was wrong. I should have spoken up earlier. Zora nods graciously. Thank you. Speaking up against discrimination requires courage, and I appreciate your acknowledgement. The power dynamic has shifted so completely that the spa feels like an entirely different space. Zora has transformed from excluded customer to empowered executive, and the employees who thought they controlled the situation now face career-ending consequences for their choices. The consequences for Victoria, Jessica, and Brandon unfold with the systematic precision of corporate accountability. Zora's legal team documents every aspect of the discrimination, creating a comprehensive record that will prevent these employees from claiming ignorance or disputing the fact. The audio recordings are particularly damning, Zora's general counsel explains, as security escorts the terminated employees from the premises. Clear evidence of discriminatory intent, fabricated policies, and racist commentary. Any wrongful termination claims will be immediately dismissed. Victoria attempts one final appeal as security approaches her. Ms. Thompson, I've worked in hospitality for 20 years. I've never had a complaint like this. Surely there's some way to resolve this without destroying my career. Zora studies Victoria's face, seeing desperation but no genuine understanding of the harm she's caused. Your experience in hospitality makes your behavior more concerning, not less. You should have known better. Unless you may have been better. I was protecting the business, Victoria insists. I was trying to maintain our reputation. You were perpetuating discrimination, Zora responds firmly. And now you're facing the consequences of that choice. The State Civil Rights Commission will investigate, and other employers will know about your conduct. Jessica pleads through her tears as security prepares to escort her out. Please, Miss Thompson. I'm only 28. I have student loans. This will ruin my life. Zora feels a flicker of sympathy for Jessica's youth, but she remembers the cruelty in the young woman's voice when she said, "People like you should know your place." Your age doesn't excuse discrimination, Zora says quietly. If anything, it makes it more troubling. You're starting your career by treating people as less than human based on their race. Brandon tries a different approach, attempting to shift blame. I was just following Victoria's lead. She's the one who set the tone. I was just doing what I thought management wanted. Zora's expression hardens. You made choices, Brandon. You chose to support discrimination rather than stand up for what was right. You chose to escalate rather than de-escalate. Those were your decisions, and now you face the consequences. The legal implications extend beyond immediate termination. Zora's attorneys explain that the documented discrimination creates potential liability for the terminated employees personally, not just for the business. Federal civil rights violations can result in personal criminal charges, the lawyer explains. We're reviewing whether to recommend prosecution. Victoria's face goes ashen. Criminal charges? For what? Conspiracy to violate civil rights under federal law, Zora responds. When multiple people coordinate to deny someone's service based on race, it becomes a federal crime. The reality of potential criminal prosecution sends shockwaves through all three terminated employees. What they thought was routine customer service has become a federal civil rights case with serious legal consequences. Zora's assistant provides updates on the broader implications. The story is already spreading on social media. Several customers recorded the incident and posted it online. The hashtag spa discrimination is trending locally. The viral nature of the incident means that Victoria, Jessica, and Brandon will face public accountability in addition to legal consequences. Their names and faces will be associated with discrimination, making future employment in customer service virtually impossible. This is going to follow us forever, Brandon realizes, his voice hollow with despair. Yes, it will, Zora confirms. Just like discrimination follows its victims forever. The difference is that you chose this outcome through your actions. Zora's HR director arrives to handle the administrative aspects of the terminations. We'll need to document everything for the EEOC investigation and potential litigation. The discrimination was so blatant that this will likely become a textbook case. The terminated employees are escorted from the building under the watchful eyes of other customers who witness the discrimination. Their departure feels like a public judgment on their behavior. Within hours, the incident spreads across social media platforms, with customers who witnessed the discrimination sharing their own accounts of what they observed. The public accountability extends far beyond the spa's walls. My phone is ringing with calls from other businesses, Victoria's replacement reports. Everyone in the hospitality industry is talking about this case. The terminated employees are effectively blacklisted. Zora nods grimly. Discrimination should have consequences. When people choose to treat others as less than human, they forfeit their right to claim victim status when accountability arrives. The spa's atmosphere changes dramatically as word spreads among the remaining staff. Employees who weren't directly involved in the discrimination watch nervously as Zora conducts impromptu interviews, assessing the depth of the cultural problems. This isn't just about 3 bad employees, Zora explains to her executive team. This is about systemic failures that allowed discrimination to flourish unchecked. The terminated employees' professional networks quickly distance themselves from the scandal. Victoria's LinkedIn profile becomes a cautionary tale shared in hospitality management groups. Jessica's sorority sisters express horror at her behavior. Brandon's former colleagues publicly condemn his actions. The industry is small, Zora's operations director observes. Word travels fast, and discrimination scandals destroy careers permanently. Zora watches through the window as Victoria, Jessica, and Brandon are escorted to their cars by security. Their faces show the devastating realization that their lives have been fundamentally altered by their choices. They'll never work in customer service again, her assistant notes. The legal liability alone makes them unemployable. Good, Zora responds without hesitation. People who can't treat customers with basic human dignity shouldn't be in customer service roles. The immediate consequences are severe, but Zora knows the long-term impact will be even more significant. The case will be studied in business schools, cited in civil rights litigation, and remembered as an example of how discrimination destroys careers and lives. Within 24 hours, the terminated employees' social media accounts are flooded with criticism from people who saw the viral videos. Their personal reputations are destroyed, along with their professional careers. Public accountability is often more powerful than legal consequences, Zora's communications director observes. These employees will face social consequences for years to come. Zora doesn't take pleasure in their suffering, but she doesn't regret the accountability either. Actions have consequences. They chose discrimination, and now they're experiencing the results of that choice. The legal proceedings that follow are swift and decisive. With clear audio and video evidence, there's no defense for the discriminatory behavior. Settlement discussions focus on damages rather than liability. This case will set precedent for discrimination in luxury service industries, Zora's attorney explains. The documentation is so comprehensive that it will be used to train lawyers and business owners for years. The terminated employees' attempts to find new employment are consistently unsuccessful. Background checks reveal their involvement in federal civil rights violations, making them toxic to potential employers. We've created a cautionary tale, Zora reflects. Sometimes, the best way to prevent discrimination is to demonstrate that it has real, permanent consequences. 3 weeks later, Zora sits in the renovated spa's meditation room, surrounded by the peaceful sounds of flowing water and soft music. The space looks identical to how it appeared before the incident, but everything has changed. The toxic culture that allowed discrimination to flourish has been replaced by comprehensive training, clear policies, and accountability measures. The new staff training program is unprecedented, her HR director reports. 8 hours of civil rights education, ongoing bias training, and clear consequences for discriminatory behavior. Other businesses are asking to adopt our model. Zora nods, pleased with the systemic changes but still processing the personal impact of the experience. I built this business to be a sanctuary for everyone. The fact that my own employees turned it into a place of exclusion breaks my heart. The incident has become a catalyst for broader conversations about discrimination in luxury service industries. Zora has been invited to speak at conferences, contribute to academic studies, and advise other business owners on creating inclusive environments. The silver lining is that this painful experience is helping other businesses prevent similar discrimination, her communications director notes. We're turning a negative into a positive. Zora's leadership during the crisis has earned respect from business leaders, civil rights organizations, and community groups. The spa's reputation has not only recovered, but strengthened as a result of her decisive action against discrimination. Customers are specifically choosing us because they know we don't tolerate discrimination, the new operations director reports. Revenue is up 20% since the incident. Zora walks through the spa's treatment rooms, greeting staff members who now understand that their CEO expects excellence in both service and human dignity. The training program has created a culture where discrimination is not just forbidden, but unthinkable. The most important lesson is that leadership requires constant vigilance, Zora reflects. I assumed that my values would automatically translate into organizational culture. I learned that creating an inclusive environment requires active, ongoing effort. The case has become a teaching tool in business schools, law schools, and civil rights organizations. Zora regularly receives requests to share her story, turning a personal experience of discrimination into a public education opportunity. We have a responsibility to speak up when we witness discrimination, Zora tells audiences across the country. Silence in the face of injustice makes us complicit in perpetuating harmful systems. The transformed spa now serves as a model for other businesses seeking to create genuinely inclusive environments. The comprehensive anti-discrimination policies, extensive staff training, and clear accountability measures have become industry standards. What happened to me wasn't unique, Zora explains to her management team. Discrimination happens every day to people who don't have the power to fight back. Our responsibility is to ensure it never happens in our business again. The incident has also strengthened Zora's commitment to supporting other business owners who face discrimination. She's established a legal fund to help small business owners pursue civil rights cases and created mentorship programs for entrepreneurs from underrepresented communities. Privilege comes with responsibility, Zora explains. I had the resources and platform to seek justice. Not everyone does. We need to use our success to help others. Zora's story has inspired other business leaders to examine their own organizational cultures and address discrimination proactively rather than reactively. The spa incident has become a catalyst for industry-wide change. The goal isn't just to prevent discrimination in our business, Zora tells her board of directors. It's to contribute to a broader transformation that makes discrimination unacceptable everywhere. The personal growth Zora has experienced through the ordeal has deepened her commitment to social justice and inclusive leadership. She's become a more effective advocate for civil rights because she's experienced discrimination firsthand as a successful business owner. I thought my success would insulate me from discrimination, Zora reflects. I learned that prejudice doesn't respect professional accomplishments or economic status. That's why fighting discrimination is everyone's responsibility. Zora's story spreads far beyond the spa's walls, becoming a rallying cry for people who refuse to accept discrimination in any form. Her message is clear. Everyone has the power to stand up against injustice, regardless of their position or resources. Don't wait for someone else to take action, Zora urges audiences across the country. If you witness discrimination, speak up. If you experience discrimination, document it. If you have the power to create change, use it. The ripple effects of Zora's decisive action continue to spread through communities, industries, and organizations. Business owners implement anti-discrimination policies, employees receive bias training, and customers demand inclusive treatment everywhere they go. Remember that discrimination thrives in silence, Zora emphasizes. When we speak up, document injustice, and demand accountability, we create a world where discrimination becomes impossible to ignore and impossible to defend. Zora's final message resonates with everyone who has experienced discrimination or witnessed injustice. You have more power than you realize. Use it. The story concludes with Zora's powerful reminder that treating everyone with dignity isn't just morally right, it's a choice that defines who we are as human beings. You never know who you're talking to, but more importantly, it shouldn't matter. Treat everyone with respect, not because they might be powerful, but because they're human. Choose dignity, demand justice, create change.